Welcome to a Tree Talks review. I'm Tree, and today we'll be going over Castlevania Lords of Shadow, Mirror of Fate. Goddamn, is that a lot of titles.
House Targaryen, rightful heir to the Iron Throne, rightful Queen of the Andals and the First Men, protector of the Seven Kingdoms, the Mother of Dragons, the Khaleesi of the Great Grass Sea, the Unburnt, the Breaker of Chains.
I'll be structuring this differently than the last video. There will be little to no spoilers for the story section, and I will expound greatly on the gameplay and technical aspects. I'll be reviewing this on my Xbox One X through backwards compatibility this time instead of my PC. I just wanted to sit on my couch and not drag my computer to my TV, so this will be the version of the game I will be reviewing. Without further ado, let's go grow some ideas. Mirror of Fate picks up a few decades after Gabriel has become Dracula. They break down the lore and his legacy as a Belmont. We play as Gabriel's offspring through two different generations. As much as I like the plot of Lords of Shadow titles so far, I do have to admit that they semi-tried to do something similar to the first game with Gabriel's twist turn to Dracula, but it didn't really feel like much of a twist and more like, oh, okay, kinda saw that coming. Overall, the twist, if you could even call it that, doesn't work in this game. The story feels like something that could have happened over the course of several games, and it probably would have been better for it. Hell, the gameplay probably would have been better for it. Shit, is this the segue into gameplay? Yo, it's not a God of War clone. It is a 2.5D action-adventure side-scrolling game. Mechanics-wise, I'll start with exploration. The game displays itself as if it is open for backtracking, and having the levels loop on one another, but they squander that very quickly. Once you get past the first character, you learn very quickly that the game is just a linear path of corridors with secrets hidden in each. Granted, while it isn't a Metroidvania where you can constantly try to hit walls to find treasures, the secrets are hidden just enough to give you that little joyful sensation of actually have done something, which is a slight improvement over the last game. Another thing I would like to commend is the lack of a level select. That shit was annoying as fuck in the last game, and I'm glad they did away with it. The loading screens between maps were brief, and I didn't ever feel like it was a bother at any point going between the levels. Backtracking is also rendered moot by the introduction of portals. The maps for each character aren't large, so if they had put some thought into the level design, they could have looped the castle in its outer areas, so they could have removed the teleporters altogether. But with their rather lazy inclusion, they simply pop you back to certain key points on a small link of maps and let you backtrack that way. They introduced the portals at the end of each character's maps. Convenient, seeing how now you have all the abilities so you can Sado Metroidvania elements to go get the items you weren't able to get before. Speaking of abilities, you receive them way too quickly. During the second character's run, you literally receive abilities not even 5 minutes apart, and you will have a complete suite after just an hour or two. I understand that this isn't a long game, but the pacing feels like I have ADHD and can't fucking focus on anything. Right as you get all the abilities of one character, you are pretty much immediately carted off to the next. The abilities do sort of transfer, but it ends up making the last character you play feel so smooth and great that you wonder why they didn't make the entire game with him. Overall, the exploration is alright, but between teleporters and bad pacing with movement and environmental abilities, the game suffers. The game also throws in some puzzles from time to time. They are simple and require just a little thought. Nothing dramatic or hard that is going to stop you in your tracks, but it is just enough to provide some variation. With them being as simple as they are, it surprised me that they added back in the solve the puzzle automatically mechanic again. Or, well, they provided a step-by-step guide in the game to solve said puzzle. It's kinda insulting to the player that the game designer doesn't trust the player well enough that they would be able to solve it themselves. Speaking of insulting to backtracking, see what I did there? On easier difficulties, they straight up point out secrets. I hate this shit. It destroys the point of finding things. Making it easier should only apply to damage scaling from the environment, and the enemy AI should be more aware. I don't think the AI should increase its damage because it's just some artificial scaling, but shit in one hand and wish in the other and see which one fills up first. Aight, fuck off. Time to combat.
Fuck you.
Combat, the one thing that this game shines at. It has its jank as well, but I can say I was actually having more fun with this system than the Lords of Shadow. Fun is a subjective term, so let's actually break this down. From the start, the gameplay tries to mirror its 3D counterpart. They give you a direct, wide, item, grab, block, and magic attacks, all basically mapped out in the same way the first game was. With the game being 2.5D, the only direction you have to worry about the chains flying are front or back, immediately making the combat cross a better weapon, giving us a more creative fight. Though if you feel the need, you can spam the same few attacks over and over again, and it works the same on all difficulties. On hard, I enjoyed what the combat system was, and each of the 3 characters have their own combat items and combat related abilities. That continue to make the whole system interesting, even if they are fighting the same enemy types that you've been fighting the whole game. Mirror Fate does include an XP system, but it is even more useless than in the last game. You get XP from killing enemies and collecting scrolls from the dead knights. Once you level up, you unlock a single move. Not a move you get to pick, not a move that would define your playstyle. No, instead it just unlocks a move in a list and in a set order, which kinda removes the whole point of leveling up. In a standard action RPG, the act of leveling up is to make you more powerful or versatile. While providing you a new move is versatility, it is lazy and a system that should have either been replaced by a checkpoint system or removed altogether so that the players could learn each of the moves at their own pace. With the combat being as entertaining as it is, the game continues the Lords of Shadow mainstay of having some neat boss fights. None of them are hard, even on the harder difficulties, but that doesn't stop them from being either mechanically interesting or deep in the Lords of Shadow lore. The gameplay is solid with its own set of flaws, similar to the first game, which looks like the whole theme of this series. A great setting, some decent mechanics, and way too many annoyances and or failures for its own good.
Settle, because otherwise you're just going to get older and harder and more alone. And you're going to do everything you can to fill that hole with friends and your career and meaningless sex, but the hole doesn't get filled. And one day, you're gonna look around and you're gonna realize that everybody loves you, but nobody likes you.
See, it feels like they basically took the soundtrack of Lords of Shadow and shoved it into this game. Don't get me wrong, I fucking love the soundtrack for Lords of Shadow, but with very few new tunes, it was kind of repetitive. Another thing to note is that while you're wandering around the world, the game plays its overworld track. The overworld track has this loud-ass car horn sound in it, which made me jump every time it went off, which fucking annoyed the shit out of me. Why would you put that stupid loud-ass horn in there? I thought at first it was linked to combat, but nope, it's just on loop. That would happen during its designated point. The voice acting is alright, but we'll get to cutscenes in a moment. Mirror of Fate takes on more of a cartoony, stylized art than the realistic look they went for in the first game. I'm sure this change only occurred due to the game being initially released on 3DS, but I kinda prefer this art style, especially in-game, but goddamn are these fucking cutscenes awful. The animation, the way their faces emote, everything about their design and movement in cutscene pisses me off to no extent. Irrelevant. What does matter is that in-game, the game can seem a bit dark on stock settings. Fortunately, they have a brightness adjustment, and I would just turn that shit up to about 8 so that you can see. I didn't experience any glitches or issues with the game either. Overall, I would give this game a 6.5, maybe a 6. It's a solid experience, if a bit short and rushed. The explanation to that could be that it is a 3DS game, but Dream Drop Distance came out on the same console and that was no slouch in content. It has a 70 on Metacritic, but I feel giving it that extra 10 points doesn't give room for people to explore the scale. Everything is either a masterpiece or trash nowadays, and we gotta sit back and realize that some games are made to be played and put away. I'm not coming back to this one. I enjoyed my time with it for what it was, and the story makes me want to play Lords of Shadow 2. If you did play the first one and want more story, this is a short, cheap romp that you can run through in a day. If not, just like the first game, you're not missing much. Well, with that, This has been a Tree Talks review. Leave a like, branch on down to the comment section. Until next time, plant some roots on my channel by hitting subscribe.